Welcome to our little Greek fest today. So my name is Keith Mabry. I'm with K&L Wine Merchants in the Hollywood location, and I also buy wines for Greece. It is a category that I have slowly really grown in love with. I think it's one of those categories that most people's first experience was probably not so great. About 10 or 15 years ago, when I was really getting started in the business and exploring, I found that there were, as a region, Greece just wasn't that engaging. Like most people's first experience, it was probably something along the lines of a retsina. If you're not in Greece walking the streets of Athens and stopping in a cafe to drink some retsina, you probably think, well, God, why is somebody pouring me this pine sol in a glass? How unfair is that? But the evolution of Greek wine has been dramatic. I think there's a lot that has changed in even that short period of time, probably from 15 years ago. So I think in terms of what we're looking at as an emerging category, even though I think historically this is like one of the oldest categories that we can think of, there has been a lot that has changed. So today I am really pleased to welcome, I think, one of the top Greek importers. He's been in the business for almost 30 years, and he started his import company in 1992. So we're going to take a look at some of the wines that he's famous for bringing in and do a little bit of exploration and learning along the way. So I'd like to welcome Ted Diamantis, and he should be coming in. So as Ted logs in, I would say this is a category that we've seen grow dramatically in sales, even the last couple of years. And there's Ted. Ted's with us. Okay.
Hi. Hey, Keith. How are you, buddy?
I'm good. Good to see you.
Good to see you, man.
We talked a little earlier today, but it's just been so long since I've seen your face. It's probably.
I know. I've aged so much, but you look great. You always look great.
Yes.
Me, hey.
That sounds good. I've filled out a little bit more, half beard like you as well. So,
right.
I was just
gotten lazy.
Yeah. My early experience with Greek wine, probably, 15, 20 years ago was like, oh my God, what are they thinking? How is this one of the oldest wine growing regions in the world? So in terms of like where you started and what drew you to that category, how did you get involved in Greek wine?
Well, it's a long story. I don't think we have enough time here, but I'm going to put it very briefly. I'm a first generation Greek guy, born and raised in Chicago, but was interacting with Greece since I was 4 years old. And post college, I went into the world of risk management, insurance risk management, and was not a corporate guy by any means. Kind of wanted to find my own path, and because my family's from Greece and the EU was just coming together, this is right around 1989, sorry. And I was young and not young and dumb, kind of, but young and had a lot and didn't know what constrained me. So I went to Greece and traveled around Europe trying to figure out what I can do in my career, in my life, what my passion was. And while in Greece and anchoring me out of there, I met a young winemaker named George Skouras. He was at that time making wine in his garage, but we became fast friends, and he kind of lit a bug in me about how wine is a way of life, how agriculture, how all these different aspects of our personalities could fit in one industry, being creative, being in touch with the land, having patience, using your business acumen, using your artistic acumen. Everything comes into play when it comes to wine. And it kind of sparked me. I was probably around 27 years old, and I was full of vigor, and I kind of jumped on that bandwagon with George Skouras. And again, now fast forward, and we're going to talk about his wines in a little bit. George Skouras is one of the preeminent winemakers, not only of Greece but of Europe, and one of the pioneers of the evolution of Greek wines that you've been tasting over and over for the last 2 decades. So. That's how I got into it. Jumped into it with both feet, literally, and then slowly, learned the business. And I had a great opportunity when I was about 3 years into it to kind of go work for a local distributor here in Chicago because they were attracted by the wines I was importing, but they also needed a knucklehead like me to go work for them. So I started selling wines from all over the world. And really, that was my school. That's where I learned so much about the industry, about being on the street, about carrying a bag, about the mind share of a salesperson, about wines from all over the other parts of the world, about working with other importers, about working with the producers. That I started leaning into all that great information and applying it into this new nascent industry of Greek wine. Like you said, it's the oldest wine industry in the world, the oldest history of wine production in the world, but it was held back by a series of historical events from world wars and civil wars and 400 years of enslavement. And it just started finding its cultural roots probably in the 80s and the 90s.
That's interesting. Yeah, because we've seen other regions like Spain kind of went through similar things, when they were under fascist regime. Right. It wasn't until the late 80s and 90s when they started, well, I wish I had brought a glass too. So when they started basically like reinventing themselves, and even though the wines hadn't changed that much in production, they figured out ways to market them and bring them to the international market. So in terms of wine production, how do you think, I know, didn't George study abroad? Didn't he study in France with winemaking?
Right. He was of that first generation of Greek that were had the ability to go study outside of Greece and go to university in other parts of Europe and other parts of the world, but mostly in Europe. And he and a bunch of other colleagues, his contemporaries, mostly studied in France. Some went to Spain, some went to Germany. A lot went to Italy, but more France. And he particularly went to Dijon. That was his school, viticulture and enology in Burgundy. He worked in Beaujolais, he worked in Champagne before coming back to Greece in the mid 1980s with his crazy dream of making Greece a world-class wine producing country again, and using the indigenous ancient varieties.
We kind of think of George as like the godfather of the modern wine movement in Greece, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, that's why today he's the president of the Greek Winemakers Federation. So everybody else in the industry thinks of him that way as well, and they voted him in. So he's been doing that for 4 or 5 years, like he doesn't have enough other things to do. So yeah, he's a great figure. He's inspirational. He's bigger than life, but he's also super talented and super grounded. And for a guy who started a winery out of his dad's garage with no money, it's pretty impressive what he's accomplished.
So a couple of the wines that we have in the store that we're going to talk a little bit about, and I think are really endemic or, really illustrate like what's going on in this region, are two of the indigenous grape varieties, the Moscofilero and the Agorgitico. And I probably butchered those a little bit, so maybe you can give us even a little pronunciation.
Pretty good. I will, and Keith, you are excellent, by the way. So Moscofilero, etymology of the word is Mosco. Agorgitico. It's kind of a mouthful, but it's really easy way. Remember, we did this in the vineyard. Your Itico, reversed. So it's kind of simple once we break it down a little bit, but the etymology of that word is Saint George. Ios being Saint, Yirtico being a variation of Yorgo or George. Both ancient varieties of southern Greece, all grown in the mountains. Moscofilero, and here, let me see if you guys can see that. This is kind of a little shot of what the vineyards of where Moscofilero comes from. Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. And then variety Moscofilero, which is super unique, ancient variety, been cultivated for at least 2,000 years, as far as we know. This is what the variety kind of looks like. It's a pigskin grape variety. It is the last indigenous variety of Greece to be harvested. So we harvest this in, second week of October. This is cultivated in the second coldest growing region, even though it's in southern Greece, of Greece. So here we have really big perennial temperature shifts. We have really drier conditions during the growing season, but in the winters we do get intense snow as well. And this variety loves the cold weather. And this is also specifically the wine we're going to taste today is Salto, which is a single clone of Moscofilero. You can tell that this grape has a little bit more color in the skins than the regular Moscofilero. So this Salto is 100% native yeast fermentation, single vineyard, and monoclone. It's the first ever expression of this variety with one clone and a wild yeast, or indigenous yeast fermentation. It's a unique wine, a unique version of Moscofiero that really does well in the bottle in terms of aging. Moscofiero traditionally was a variety that, 30, 40 years ago was more of a seasonal white variety that was overcropped, not taken seriously, was never aged or never made in a really, or farmed properly or vinified properly. And Skouras really leaned into a lot of his champagne training when he worked at Lems, doing these really cold cryo macerations, using dried ice back in the day, now a little bit of nitrogen to get the aromatics and the color out of the skins without getting the color. It's a classic Vin de Gris wine. Now on the Ayurvedico, which is a red variety cultivated in southern Greece. This is from the biggest red wine appellation of Greece, the appellation of Nemea, which is an ancient appellation. And by definition, it's the first appellation ever in history. Man, you guys that are out there to us, an appellation is a designated geographic region cultivating Greece specifically to make wine. That is the classic definition of appellation. This was first written about back in around 740 BCE as a geographic area making grapes, growing grapes to make wine. The Ayurvedico is the Nemea is the biggest red wine appellation in Greece in terms of size and in terms of gallonage produced, but it's only in the last 20 years that it's had this metamorphosis of going from making bulk wine and high volume wine from the valley floor to making really refined, beautiful finesse wines in the mountains, because this is a high mountain plateau. Here, let me give you a picture of what this region looks like. And Keith was in this vineyard, actually, particularly back in the day. This is what this vineyard area looks like. Very mountainous, volcanic soils with the appellation there. Yeah, it's pretty amazing, rocky. You remember that. But we also have different soil components in this area. In this whole appellation, we have sand. We have calcareous, chalky limestone soils. We'll have volcanic red soils. We'll have clay soils. So it's a quilt. It's a tapestry. Looking at and being Warren Winiarski and going to Stag's Leap District and making only from Stag's Leap District for the first time back in the 60s. Back in the day in Napa, just like in Nemea, everything was blended. And a lot of valley floor, high tonnage stuff was being done. But Nemea's going through their transformation just like Napa did 50 years ago, doing more site-specific wines. We have Rutherford, and we have Atlas Peak now, and we have Oakville, and we have, Spring Mountain. So that's what's going on in Nemea. We're really identifying these little sub-regions. George Skouras was the pioneer going back up to the mountains, making low alcohol versions of Ayurvedico, acid-driven Ayurvedicos. This little red wine, that's what I'm drinking right now, is Domaine Skouras St. George, which is a really kind of the benchmark representation of Ayurvedico from all the patchwork of all the vineyards that Skouras cultivates. It is great with the chill. I like putting mine even in the fridge just to get it down to about cellar temp. It's fantastic. It is, and I love that whole thing. Cooler red wines, right? That's kind of a thing now, and I've always enjoyed that. And this wine really does well with it. It's got these beautiful cherry berry flavors. It is a quaffer. It is also something you can lay down in your cellar for 5 years and it'll get better. When we talk about aging wines in the bottle, we're not talking about things surviving. We're talking about things getting better. So this is a wine, even at this price point, which is an everyday wine, it's fantastic the second or third day open, just if it lasts that long, but it rarely does.
So the Skouras Salto we have in stock, that's $18.99, and the Skouras Ayurvedico, that's $16.99. So I think both pretty price points to enter the market to kind of explore the roots of the modern Greek wine movement for sure. But
right on.
The one category that has probably transcended the idea of just Greek wine is the Assyrtiko, the idea of so many people visiting Santorini and bringing back having tasted the wines there and then searching them out, in the marketplace. This has become, I think, one of the most exciting wines to emerge probably in this modern movement. And I'd say one of my favorite visits to any winery of all time was when we visited Sigolas in Santorini, which I think kind of also where George had kind of created the modern movement in EMEA. It's Paris, Sigolas, right?
Paris, correct.
Yeah,
yes.
He created this sort of modern movement in Santorini. But yeah, can you talk a little bit about Assyrtiko as a grape variety and like
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Santorini is a World Heritage Site, or it should be. We're petitioning for it for years. It is a living museum of winemaking. The island was blown apart by the world's largest, one of the largest volcanic eruptions in Earth's history, the largest in historic times, a supervolcano back in 1620 BCE. It changed the course of human history, Western civilization. But in terms of viticulture, it covered the island with this unique profile of ash, pumice soils, volcanic rock, high density rock, and it's almost a very moonscape kind of landscape when we look at Santorini. The unique things about Santorini as well is it's very arid, very dry. Average in 30-year average of rainfall per year is about 15 inches. Put into context, Tucson, Arizona is 12. And in the last 4 years, we're down sub 10 inches per year. High winds are devastating in Santorini. We're not talking about 20, 30 miles. We're talking about 50, 60 sustained, 60 mile an hour sustained winds that really, really are cause a big headache when it comes to viticulture.
And they've adapted for wine cultivation.
Right.
The basket trained vines are, I think, one of the most unique visions on the island itself.
On the planet. It is something that has been done for 3,800 years. Here's a cool picture of what a vineyard looks like on Santorini.
Uh-huh.
Everything's low to the ground, and this is what a vine looks like up close. Here, I'll give it here. This is a good one. So that's what these vines look like, and they're trained in this manner to prevent chatter from the wind, and also to be low to the ground and protect themselves from the wind, but also to get any kind of moisture that occurs on this island, because this rainfall that we spoke about, this minutia of rainfall, is only during the winter months. It's only between October and March. During the growing season, there's not a drop of water, except for the sea fog that you see rolls over the island. It gets absorbed in this pumice soil that it makes it about 200 feet. And this is how we know how large of an eruption there was on this island. Pompeii, for example, is only about 25 feet of volcanic ash, while this is almost 200 feet.
200 feet.
200 feet, in some places 180. Averages about between 150 to 200 feet, depending on what part of the island you were at. And so this was a massive, massive eruption, and it lasted a long time. We find remnants of it throughout the Mediterranean crescent, on the eastern Mediterranean crescent. But these vines also are own-rooted, and they have been for 3,500 years. They've been propagated vine to vine for 3,500 years. They're the oldest DNA vines in the world. And this is the oldest continuously cultivated vineyards in the world. And this is the oldest variety, Assyrtiko. We have other varieties in the island, but 80% of the production is of this noble white variety that was originated from this island. It was isolated to this island for thousands of years until maybe about 40 years ago max. This island, because we have archaeological digs of the people that lived there, which was a very advanced culture, that people theorize this was Atlantis because that's how advanced they were. They've been there since the Bronze Age. It's around 3000 BCE. There's remnants of their amphoras where we find seeds and carbon-14 tested it, and we know Assyrtiko was there even prior to the volcanic eruption. This is a unique variety. This is a story of a unique ancient variety that's married to this unique ecosystem that creates these very unique wines. It is a thick-skinned variety because it's had to adapt to this harsh environment. This environment also because of its dryness, you would think the wines are going to be really flat and non-acidic, but they're not, because we have this unique profile of the soil that doesn't have potassium, so we don't create we don't have a lot of potassium, so we don't have a lot of my mind stopped for a second. Holy shit, Keith! It's so much information, I can't just get it out. So we have the presence of high acid wines, or the perception of high acid wines. So this is an island, the Serticos, that can also age in a bottle for many years.
Yeah, I remember we tasted several. I think we tasted a flight of older vintages, and the sweet spot seems to be like in that sort of 5 to 10 year range for, I think, the full definition of what the wine is capable of doing.
Yeah, and I would even go to 10 to 15. And that's why it's become a sweetheart in the sommelier community. It's become pretty much a benchmark. Jansen Robinson, this is her favorite variety in the world. And this variety is also now migrated off the island into different regions of the world. There's a Sertico in Australia. There's some been planted in California, Argentina, from what I understand, but also mainland Greece. So I know you have a few Serticos that you work with us.
Have, just staying on the island for just another minute, is we have the Vasalites.
Right.
Which,
Vasaltes.
So when I tasted this last year, for me, it was like a new revelation, kind of like something a little bit deeper fruited, not quite as brackish, but I thought just had such resonance and power behind it. What's the story on Vasaltes?
It's a great story. Vasaltes actually are a bunch of young guys. They're all sub 40 years old. It's about the story of one guy, Yanis Valambous, who inherited a couple of vineyards from his dad. Left the real world, was a financier banker in the UK, and goes, I'm just going to go back to this island where my dad had some land, and immerse himself into that. He connected with two really young, talented guys who are Elias and Yanni, who been on the island working at several wineries. They worked for 9 years, 8-9 years at Cigalas, who is the benchmark of the island. So they brought over this experience, hooked up with Yanni, and they created the first new winery on the island, actually, in 20 years, physical winery. There's been a lot of new labels. Here's a great picture of it. It's a little boutique winery. Their production is south of 6,000 cases, micro production, but they're really focused on even taking it up to the neck notch and really doing different representations and really doing different cultivation techniques in the vineyard, not going away from the traditional basket, but doing a little bit more consistent and more denser planting. They're unique, and they're doing some natural fermentation things. They're doing pet knots. They're doing some really cool things. And they're the future of the island. They're the next iteration. And they're in the wines. The great thing about Santorini is it's not like you're going into a region, you're like, I got to plant some vines. It's going to take me 5-10 years to catch up with everybody else, or I'm going to have to buy grapes. And by the way, everybody buys grapes in Greece because it's all about micro farming and small subsistence farming. The thing on Santorini, though, the level of fruit that's there, 100-year-old vines are the average. So you come on that island and you have some access to fruit, or you have some land you've inherited or purchased, you're going to get 100-year-old vine stuff. So all you have to do is tweak the process, and you're going to make great wine. And these guys have done it, and they've done it right out of the gate, and they're super talented. I'm super stoked at what they're doing. And I wish I could get more of their wines. We're limited to 2 pallets for the whole country. So super rare, super cool. And Cigalas, of course, is the benchmark. The vintage you have, I think 2019, was top 100 wine and spirits again. I think this winery has had, I can't even count on one hand how many times, I need 2 hands to count how many times they've gotten top 100s and things like that from everybody. So you got 2 of the seminal producers, the old original master and the young, new iteration, young superstars. So it's really great that you have both of those in the store. Great selections.
Well, so you mentioned earlier, like the grape variety has migrated off the island, and I think it's now we're really starting to see, one of the issues we run into is that the cost of production on Santorini is not inexpensive, and also world demand has increased, so the prices have. But luckily, producers like Milonis have embraced the grape variety, and they're trying that on the mainland, and I think doing it extremely well for a very reasonable price.
Oh, they are, and these guys are killer. Here's another story of a great family. It's about people. My business and what I do is, yeah, we taste a great wine. And we're like, oh, this is a great wine. Let's find out about the people behind it. Let's find out about who makes it. Find about their ethos, about their viewpoint, about how they look at the world. And we choose to work with wineries not only based on what they produce, but about who they are as human beings. And Milonas is a great story of a multi-generational family that's been cultivating grapes for over 100 plus years, but great-grandfather, grandfather, and father for the most part, but to a lesser effect, we're just bulk winemakers, just farmers.
Oh, Ted,
It is
sorry,
an ancient viticultural region.
You cut out for just a second there. Can you hear me okay?
Oh, did I? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I can hear you. Can you guys hear me? So Milonas is outside of Athens in an ancient viticulture region. This region, it's a peninsula that is surrounded by water. It's fairly hilly, mountainous, about elevations by 11 to 1,200 feet, not like Nemea, but rolling hills. This area was the region where the ancient Athenians would mine their silver that paid for the building of the Parthenon. So it's rich in mineral components. I think out of those 4,000 trace minerals in the world, there's about 900 in this small region. So it's highly minerally. This family, and here's some of their vineyards, this family has been cultivating the same way, farming the same way for the last 100 years. So organic, biodynamic pruning by the lunar cycles. Their father was buying a red grape that's cultivated on Santorini called Mandallaria, because he was using it to make a rosé, and he was buying the red from there. And how he got introduced to Milonas, this is back in 1970s. I got introduced to Sirtico is when he was buying these grapes from Santorini, because nobody cared about Santorini until 15 years ago. Even Greeks were not drinking wines from Santorini. It got popular here, U.S., before it got popular out there. And so they were shipping grapes to whoever, and they would always like sneak in some white grapes and throw them in the back of the Mandallaria just to put the weight up. And so Milonas' father in the 70s discovered this, and he started playing with it. He's like, wow, I really like this variety of Sirtico. Nobody knew about it on the mainland, nobody. And he took cuttings. He goes, I'm going to go to Santorini. He took cuttings from Santorini and planted them in this region. So the vines here are roughly 35, 40 years old. And of course, we don't have the cost of cultivation that we have in Santorini, nor the minuscule yields are in Santorini. So, but his version of a Sirtico is insane. It was this year is also touted as one of the best buys and from Spirits or Wine Enthusiasts. I forgot one of the magazines, and got some really great scores. But it is such a unique expression. It's not Santorini, because Santorini's ecosystem is so unique and soil profile is so unique that you can't capture those same elements. But it is a wine that has these beautiful acidity, ripping acidity, great.
On limestone, this one versus the volcanic pumice.
Right on. Right. All limestone in this mineral soil, rocky limestone, dry farmed, 100% organically cultivated. And it is a great expression. It's insane. It's serious. It's just exciting. It's like this electric wine. It's like these certain wines you drink, they have this phenomenal energy to them. And this is one of them.
Yeah. And only $14.99. So
only $14.99. Yeah.
If you like razor sharp, minerally driven white wines, this is definitely going to be in your wheel. And it really does capture that sort of spicy minerality that we find in Sirtico. So we have the Sigalas, that's $39.99. Pretty aggressive on the pricing there, but it's to kind of keep people motivated to keep coming after it. And then the Visaltis, that's $44.99. Definitely worth, I think, every penny if you want to see what the next iteration of producers in the region are talking about and what they're making. So one little side trip, and the place I didn't get a chance to visit, but I'm excited at some point to go, is to Crete, because I think there's a lot of fun things happening there. Yeah. And so we got one of your favorite picks here. And I think,
I love that wine. It's 2017.
Yeah, the Doulifakis, 27.
Right on, yeah. Yep.
Which I kind of compare to it's like almost like the Beaujolais of Greece. Like it's got this bright fruitiness to it, maybe a little bit more peppery spice underneath, kind of a little bit of gaminess under there as well. But you know, for me, like a light chill, like you said, with the
perfect, yeah,
and it's a tough to beat wine. Maybe even a good Thanksgiving pick for this season. If you want to
it's great. It is great because it has that really deep core of red fruit, but it has, like you said, these nuanced, leathery, sagey, kind of herbaceous kind of things going on too. Ancient variety. It's been made for thousands of years. Crete. It's the southernmost point of Europe, fifth largest island in the Mediterranean. It is the biggest island in the Greek world, in Hellenic world. Goes back, it's probably the oldest linear A Greeks, the hieroglyphic Greeks, the Minoans, who settled Santorini, originated on Crete. This was their home. So this is one of the oldest culture. The oldest wine presses ever excavated just till recently in the last were in Crete, and we have over 100 of them. I think, Keith, you've seen some of these old Minoan presses carved out of stone in the mountains. I think we've been to them. So this wine production on this island has been going on for, almost 5,000 years.
and they want to know what you're drinking, Ted.
What am I drinking? I'm drinking the Domaine Scuris Ayurvedico.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And so Yatiko is one of these ancient varieties that got forgotten about on the island. There was only two producers, and both of them, they really brought this back, Doulifakis being one, that brought this back into cultivation and vinification for red wine. Both of them, ironically, studied in Piemonte. This, you mentioned it's Gamay-ish, but it's also kind of Barbera-ish or Dolcetto-ish. It's a little Frappato as well. And there's a lot of cross-cultural links between Crete and southern Italy as well, and Venice. The Venetians were there for, almost 150, 200 years, trading wine for many, many years during the Middle Ages. So a lot of influence. Here's a picture of one of the vineyards where this wine comes from. Beautiful.
Yeah, the volcanic islands there really create such dramatic vistas, and also just the great topography for, I think, planting.
And this is all limestone soils as well.
Yeah.
So this wine, the 2017, was also top 100 wine enthusiasts. So 2 top 100 wines today.
Right. So we'll kind of finish on one of, I think, maybe if we were to say like Assyrtiko is the wine that you introduce people to Greece to kind of realign what's happening there. I think the next grape that I think is starting to blow people's minds is Mavro. And so I'm a huge fan of this grape variety. And we've got two that we're featuring. We have the Curiani, which is one of the most historical wine producing families, the Butari family, but the independent. And then Caridas, which for me was a all single estate, one basic vineyard, if I remember right. So what is it about Mavro that's so captivating that I think
it's
drawn to it?
It's a variety that, when farmed correctly, and it's also farmed. It's located in two appellations to be 100%. Would be a medium, a cooler, high climate appellation, and Nalsa, which both of these wines are from, which is a little more coastal, a little more Mediterranean climate. There's other two appellations that cultivate Sonoma, they're blended with other indigenous varieties. But it's a variety that's very stylistically can be compared to Nebbiolo, in some cases Pinot Noir. It has tannins. It has acid. Actually, the name Mavro means acid black. So this variety is unique to the northern part of Greece. in these 4 appellations to cultivate it, 2 being 100%, 2 being blended. And Kiriani is one of the pioneers working with these varieties for multiple generations. Both of these wines that you're representing, Caridas, which is my smallest producer that we work with, and we've been working with him, oh my God, now for 15 vintages almost, more than that actually. And he is only produces 1,100 cases of wine. We only get 330 for the United States per vintage. And he has one of these rare single vineyard expressions of it's 1 point, I think, no, it's 2 hectares. And the family lives on the property, touches the vines and makes the wine. Everything is hand corked, hand labeled, hand filled. This is actually a great picture of the vineyard.
Yeah. What's the soil type like? Because this is in northern Greece. What's the soil type there like? How is it different?
Here's soil. Here is limestone, calcareous, clay soils in this particular appellation, and you get some alluvial soil components as well. So a mix of these soils. Here's actually, when we're talking about the Kiriani Romneysta vineyard, here's a picture of that vineyard. And a little bit there we go. But when we're talking about, this is a great picture. When we look at the soil profiles, even in this one vineyard in the middle of Nausa, these are all the different pHs in the soil. And so we have different plots depending on, with even a single vineyard, we can have a mix of soil profiles. Climate is Mediterranean. So we have milder winters. Perennial temperature shifts aren't that great. We have more rainfall in this region as well. But stylistically, the Cuvée Village, for example, which is the entry-level new wine from Kiriani, kind of captures all the little vineyards within this tiny appellation. Because Nausa, which is the appellation we're talking about right now, is tiny. It's small. I think there's only 450 hectares planted. But there's about 80 little villages within that little region. So the Cuvée Village is a tapestry of some of the Kiriani vineyards and purchase fruit from all these little growers that they buy from, put together to be a great entry-level expression of what Sonoma of Nausa should be. While Caridas is one of the stately monopoles of the appellation. It is one of the historic vineyards. It's about 38-year-old vineyards. You saw it was planted on about 30% decline. It drains very well. It is a special little spot that just, even when hail hits the region, it gets protected. Even when we have damaging weather, for some reason, this little piece of land just is always blessed and always makes great fruit. And it's about the people again. It's about a mom and a dad and a son who built that house, built that winery, touches every vine every day with their own hands. Everything is done by this family. Mom puts the labels on. It is a great story, and a wine that you put in your cellar, you can enjoy today, but in drinking 15, 20 years from now, and you'll be going, holy shit. I'm sorry, dude, can we say shit?
I'm fine and older, so it's fine. So, in terms of, and just these two, so the Kiriani we have on the shelf for $15.99, and the Caridas is $27.99. So I think, especially the Caridas, I've had older bottles of this, and I think it just ages really beautifully. So, 5 to 10 years on that is probably just the starting point for where that wine can go to. In terms of what do you see the future of the Greek wine industry looking like? What are you excited about?
Well, I'm excited about the acceptance of the Greek wines around the world and the United States consumer. Being in this business, like you mentioned, for a long time, for almost 30 years now, and seeing the evolution of how the consumer is accepting Greek wines and how the wines have also improved and how they over-deliver at every price point. When we get a consumer on Greek wines, and especially our producers, because we know them really well, people become loyal followers, and people start collecting. I'm excited about the new producers coming on board. I'm excited about, we were finding out, even though these varieties are thousands of years old, we're finding out about them today more and more. We're doing clonal selections. We're doing planting the right variety in the right region. We're doing better crop yields, better canopy management, better farming. So I think we've only touched on a fraction of what Greek wines are going to be quality-wise going forward. I think they're going to keep on improving over the next decade, and I think they've made leaps and bounds over the last 25 years. And I think today Greek wines are at par with the greatest wine-producing countries in the world, and the most collectible wines in the world, reds and whites. I think we're back to our glories. We got to remember that for over 2,000 years, Greek wines were considered, even going into the 18th century and 19th century, early 19th century, early 18th century, early 1800s, late 1800s, the best wines in the world, even though they were handled by Venetian traders and not by Greeks. So our soils, our elevation, our history, our varieties are some of the most exciting in the world. We're not homogeneous. It's not like every wine tastes like each other in Greece.
Those two Xenomavros are, not worlds apart, but definitely have the distinctive fingerprints that make them, unique and worth exploring. That's one of the reasons why I like that grape variety so much, because I think there's so much potential, and I think we're starting to realize a lot of that potential now, for sure.
Yeah, and also, and we're not homogeneous, but we're not these big mega wineries. These are wineries about small farmers, subsistence farmers, about real people making real wine, about people carving out a middle-class existence, not becoming wealthy and having private jets and $1 million chandeliers in their wineries. This is about real winemaking and special people that are making it and when we're buying Greek wines, we're also supporting a lot of great people. And it's not about enriching people.
Well, Ted, thank you so much for spending some time with us and kind of giving us a little history, a deep tour, and again, always blown away by the offerings, and look forward to seeing what's coming in next year as well. So
thank you.
Hopefully I'll see you sometime in the new year. I think we've got, maybe we'll meet in Greece. Hopefully.
I hope so.
Next
so
year.
Good. I want to say thank you to Keith. To everybody, Keith is one of the great wine buyers in this country, and great palate. And thank you to K&L. You guys have been big supporters of us from a long time. So keep it up, and thank you guys, and be well and be safe, and hope to see everybody soon.
All right, take care.
Bye.
So that's our little show today. I want to thank you all for joining us and getting some of Ted's perspective on the fascinating world of Greek wines. I think we're just really scratching the surface. There's a category. As a category, I've seen it grow almost 100% every year, not just in quality, but in the quantity of what people are interested and excited in. And I hope some of you guys will try out some new Greek wines. So I'm going to sign off here in just a moment, and hopefully some of you will join us Wednesday, and we'll be doing a little tasting session with Shelby and myself, and we'll be looking at some alternate sparkling wines from various parts of France. So I hope to see you guys on